No president in my lifetime has worked as hard to make it clear why we need a new president. We have a serious problem in our economy. We have a serious problem with the price of gasoline. We have an enormous $2 trillion deficit. We have conflict in Libya. We have a challenge in Japan. And the spectator-in-chief shares with us his Final Four pick and then goes to Brazil to kick a soccer ball. Now, I actually think we need a president who would like to be president. President Obama goes to Brazil, and he says, and we're going to do a YouTube on this in the near future that you will love. He says, "I'm so glad you're drilling offshore." And of course, the U.S. government has given $2 billion in loan guarantees to the Brazilians to be able to buy the equipment to drill offshore. And then the president says, "We really want to be your customer." Now, I just want to give you a conservative, pro-American alternative. Imagine you went to Brazil and said, "Isn't it terrific that we're drilling offshore even more than you are?" Imagine the president went to Brazil and said, "It is terrific that we're giving American companies precisely the same breaks to get equipment for work in the U.S. that we were giving you, and therefore our companies are not at a disadvantage in competing with you." And imagine an American president went to Brazil and said, "Hi, we would like you to be our customers so we could make money and have jobs selling to you." You know, the Obama model of the economy is that we borrow money from the Chinese so we can give it to the Brazilians with no American jobs in between. That's not sustainable. I mean, it's bad enough when your 13-year-old uses the family credit card and doesn't realize that there's this second phase called payment. But to have a president of the United States who doesn't understand this is really very sobering. Imagine an American president who says to you, "I have the authority of the United Nations and the Arab League." Now, I was intrigued because I'm a historian by training, and I've written a number of books on the American founding fathers, 2 novels on Washington, a book called Rediscovering God in America about the Declaration and the Constitution. So I went back and checked in the Constitution. I couldn't find the Arab League. I mean, since he's a Harvard Law graduate and was, he's the editor of the Harvard Law Review, he's a very smart man. I'm really hoping that he will sort of share with the nation what clause has the Arab League in it, or what clause has the United Nations in it. I mean, American presidents consult with the United States Congress and then do what is in the sovereign interest of the United States. We don't worry about a collection of dictators who get together randomly to tell us whether or not they approve of what we're doing. Part of what got me back into public life was when the Ninth Circuit Court ruled that saying "one nation under God" as a pledge in public school was unconstitutional. I thought that was such a historically ignorant and fundamentally anti-American decision that required an intellectual response. So I wrote a little book called Rediscovering God in America. And the entire book's just historic. It's not theological, it's not religious, it's historic. And it starts with the following facts. And I think facts matter. Lincoln once said that if a man can assert that 2 + 2 equals anything but 4, and you can't get him to quit doing it, you can't possibly win the argument because facts have no meaning. And so I think facts really matter. It is a fact that if you go to the National Archive, you can see the original Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence is a political document. It's not a theological document. It explained why we were breaking with Great Britain. It begins by saying we hold these truths to be self-evident. The word truth is important here. The Founding Fathers were not out there with a philosophy. They were not out there with an ideology. They were sincerely trying to figure out the truth of how people can govern themselves. They said we're all created equal, and we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, this is the most extraordinary moment in American history, because here you have a group of people who've gathered together who say the power comes from God to each one of you personally. You're personally sovereign. That's why America is exceptional. It's not because we're bigger, stronger. It's because we are the one society in history which says power actually resides in the citizen as a grant from God. The citizen is sovereign, and the citizen loans power to the state. The state does not loan power to the citizen. Now, we've had, since 1932, a continuous erosion of the American system. We've had a centralization of power in Washington. We've had a growing elite, which in our universities, in our bureaucracies, in our courts, in our news media, have been less and less aware of the American experience. And we're at a great choice. I think the election of 2012 will rival 1860 and 1932 as one of the great moments in American history. Now, you should feel very confident. Cliss and I did a movie called 9 Days to Change the World about Pope John Paul II going back to Poland in 1979, because we were told by Lech Wałęsa and Václav Havel, the president of Poland and the president of Czechoslovakia, that the decisive moment in breaking the Soviet Empire was June 2nd, 1979, a year and a half before Reagan's elected, when the Pope goes back home. The very first morning, 3 million people come out to Victory Square in Warsaw, and they look around, and they're there for Mass. This is a dictatorship. Now, it's hard to realize how bad this dictatorship was. It would not allow children to pray in school, and it kept tearing down crosses. So you can imagine how oppressed they felt. And the people looked around each other. In our movie, we have several Poles who were there who say, you know, we looked around and we suddenly realized there are more of us than there are of the government. Why are we afraid of them? Now, I found that to be an amazingly useful moment. Let me give you the numbers from Gallup 2 months ago. When Gallup asked, do you think the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence make the United States an exceptional country, or do you think we're a normal country? It was 80 to 18. Our job is not to go out and convince people to be Americans. Our job is to go out to every neighborhood of every ethnic background, of every culture, and gather up everybody who already believes it. That would give us approximately a 4-to-1 margin. Now, that means that after the New York Times and MSNBC are done, after the labor unions are done, after the Democratic machine is done, we'd only probably have a 3-to-1 margin. But 3-to-1 would be enough. You could govern with 3-to-1. Now, how do you turn that into practicality? First, every state should adopt a law requiring that the Declaration of Independence be taught every single year, K through 12, and be taught in every tax-paid school and college and university in the state. There's no provision in the Declaration of Independence for a federal Department of Happiness. We're not guaranteed an outcome. There's no provision for happiness stamps so the under-happy can somehow be compensated. There's no provision for a right to sue if you're unhappy. There's no provision in the Declaration of Independence. I mean, the Founding Fathers would have thought it strange for a politician to walk into a room like this and say, I'm now going to take from the overly happy and redistribute to the underly happy. When I helped pass welfare reform after 30 years of debate, first proposed by Governor Ronald Reagan in 1966, we passed it in 1996. We had so decisively won the argument that 92% of the American people favored welfare reform. We had concluded that giving people money for doing nothing was destructive, that it taught bad habits, and that it gave the children a really bad role model. And so 2 out of 3 people on welfare went to work or went to school. Yet today, we have an unemployment compensation program which gives people up to 99 weeks for doing nothing, which is a fundamental violation of welfare reform. And so I propose that we turn unemployment compensation into a worker training program, and you only get the money if you sign up for a training program offered by a business which will train you to actually have a job. Because if you had 99 weeks of training, you would be enormously more productive. We'd be dramatically improving human capital. And remember, this is a $134 billion expenditure last year for which we got nothing. And I think we should not pay people to do nothing. I think it is fundamentally wrong, and so we need a new approach. We need a real program for the economy, for jobs, and for energy. Now, this is not magic. Coming out of the movie 9 Days to Change the World, we learned that the Solidarity movement, they fought with the Soviets for 10 years. The Pope comes June 2nd, 1979. They have their first free election June 4th, 1989. So for 10 years, they're in a struggle with the dictatorship. And one of the things they did during the struggle is they put up a poster that said, in Polish, that says, we have a copy in my office that we got, that's an original Solidarity poster, that said, for Poland to remain Poland, 2 + 2 must always equal 4. And they came at it from a couple of angles. One was that Camus had written in his novel, The Plague, there are times when a man can be killed for saying 2 + 2 = 4 because the authorities can't stand the truth. And I think the whole reaction of the Obama team to honest reports on Obamacare is an example of that. I think the whole reaction of our elites to honest conversations about radical Islamists is an example of that. Second, Orwell, who was a left-wing intellectual, but who had come to the conclusion that Hayek was right and that there was a road to serfdom and that centralized planning and bureaucracy led us to serfdom. And Orwell decided that the British Labour government had in it the roots of dictatorship. And so he writes a novel that's very famous called 1984. And he kept making the point, this is not about Moscow. But 1984 takes place in London. And in his novel, he has the torturer on behalf of the state say to the innocent citizen, if we tell you 2 + 2 = 5, it equals 5. If we tell you 2 + 2 = 3, it equals 3. And the citizen's thinking, but what if it really equals 4? But they're tired of being tortured. So now we come to America today. I had American Solutions put together this bumper sticker. It's bold, it's out at the edge. We did it because we want to, I think this is the most important governing political slogan in the next 25 years. It's very simple. It's 2 + 2 = 4. I mean, you can either get one from Solutions or you can make your own. It's not too hard. You can go around your neighborhood, you can show it to your neighbors. If they agree, make sure they register to vote.